Election Day is Tuesday, November 6th, and CMU Public Broadcasting again brings you Meet the Candidates, the election year series that gives you the chance to meet those seeking state and national office.
Support of WCMU is provided by Flint Institute of Arts, presenting Drawing Together International Cartoons. The exhibition features 300 cartoons from the Iden Doan Foundation International Competition and runs through December 30th. FlintArts.org.
Welcome to this edition of Meet the Candidates. I'm Mike Horace, and we're joined this time by Martha O'Cray, Democratic candidate for Michigan's 33rd State House District. Martha, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
In the first few minutes we have, can you give us some background about yourself? Talk about the experience you're bringing into this race.
I certainly can. I am a first-time candidate to any public office. I have spent my entire career in education. I was with the Roseville Community Schools for 36 years, serving as teacher, principal, curriculum director, and assistant superintendent. When I retired, I knew I couldn't go from warp speed to neutral, so I became an educational consultant working for the Michigan Department of Education, as well as North Central Association, which accredits the schools, and local school districts. So I think I bring to this position a life and career of experience, leadership, decision-making, working with people through consensus, and making a positive difference.
Paint a picture for us, if you will, of the 33rd State House District. Where is it geographically, and what are some of the issues in that district that are important?
I'd be happy to. It's a big district. It's redistricted, so it's a new district, and it includes the townships of Armada, Richmond, Ray, Lenox, and most of Macomb Township. Now, this is in northern Macomb. The four most northern districts, Armada, Richmond, Ray, and Lenox, are fairly rural. Lots of farms, lots of orchards, small businesses. And then Macomb Township is mostly the bedroom community for commuters into the greater Detroit area. The area has been conservative. Worried about the economy, as everybody in Michigan is, worried about roads and making sure that they can raise their families.
So what are some of the biggest issues for you heading into this November?
Oh, this is why I decided to run. I'm a mom, I'm a grandma, I'm retired. I should be ready to start relaxing on the beach somewhere, but instead I've been very frustrated over the attacks on the middle class that the recent legislation has passed. And so I am committed to making that positive difference in Lansing, working for the middle class, working for public education, working for working families and senior citizens. And probably most important, I want to make sure my grandchildren have the same American dream that I was able to have.
You've mentioned those middle class issues. What are some things you would push for right away if you are elected to this seat?
Oh, first and foremost, I would want the legislature to take another look at education. Education needs to remain our priority in this state if we want to be competitive and we want to be futuristic, planning for the future. I agree that we have to make changes. I agree that there is room for reform, but just simply cutting the budget does not necessitate reform, and we need to go deeper than that.
What are some of these reforms that you would push for?
One of them would be the way we are guaranteeing money for the schools. Right now it's almost impossible for a school district to plan with any kind of long term since they don't know what school aid is going to be for the next September. So we need to make some priorities and look at that so that they have some long-term stability. And then we can take a look at those reforms that we want to make, and some have been made with teacher tenure, that we want to ensure are going to fix the situation and not just Band-Aid it.
Is this perhaps the time to look at the funding mechanism for public schools?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We have a big discrepancy between high-spending school district and low-spending school districts. That gap is even brought on greater because oftentimes it is a shadow of social economic status, and it takes more to educate a low-income student than it does a high-income student. They don't come to school with on the same playing field.
You said that jobs was also an issue in your district. People are very worried about the economy. What are some things you think you could do, should you be elected to this seat, to help improve the economy here in Michigan, to help guarantee more jobs?
Well, I'm very encouraged. On the drive up, I noted several new areas with construction sites, and it's wonderful to see new construction in our state. It's been a long time coming. But going back, one of the things I think that I would definitely support is the right for employees to talk to their employers at the table about working conditions and wages. So the collective bargaining issue is certainly one that's important to me. I think that we need to make Michigan jobs first. And I think that if we start looking long-term and putting reforms in rather than just cuts, our economy will stabilize.
What do you mean by making Michigan jobs first?
Oftentimes, when we do have projects or new construction, it's bid out to the lowest bidder. And although I understand that, my husband was a small businessman, and I know you have to look at the bottom line. I think we need to provide Michigan workers with the opportunity for the employment first. And so that competitive age has to always look at Michigan workers.
Another issue that I'm curious about is senior issues for people that are either nearing retirement or are already in retirement. How would you propose addressing some of their concerns?
Well, that happens to be a subject near and dear to my heart since I fall into that category. I think we have senior citizens who have worked hard all of their lives, who have done what they were supposed to do, promises were made, and now they expect promises to be kept. But I also think we have an obligation to make sure that seniors on a limited budget, on a fixed income, have affordable health care and have security in their retirement. That's very important. So as we're looking at making changes in the retirement system or anything, we have to look at that graduated scale to make sure we're protecting those who need it the most.
As you have been campaigning over the last few months, what are you hearing from people within your district? What are they telling you that they want to see done in Lansing?
I think the biggest problem that I'm hearing is people don't feel they're being represented. They feel that special interests are being represented. And I don't think people are so naive as to think that the cuts don't have to be made. They know we need a balanced budget. They know we have to spend within our means. But they also need to know that everybody is facing the same issues. In prosperity, we all benefit. When we have to tighten our belts, we all need to tighten our belts, not just specific groups, targeted groups.
So lay out some of these priorities for who you would protect most, who you would work for the most. What should the priorities be heading into November?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Mike, because that's one of the things that I don't see happening in legislation right now. I think that they are looking at the budget. They know we have to make cuts, so they often take the biggest piece of the pie and just say, we're cutting your budget by 10% or 15%. And as I mentioned before, cuts don't equate with reform. So I think we have to develop our priorities. We have to know what we want in the future. We have to be able to have the courage and the fortitude to discard those programs that are no longer working. We have to examine programs with waste, fraud, and duplicity and get rid of them. And we have to prioritize for public education, the working families who are the foundation for our economy, and for senior citizens who have built us our foundation.
As you mentioned earlier in our conversation, you are in a newly redrawn district. These issues we've been talking about, how is that redistricting process playing a role in this?
Well, since I'm new to politics and new to the campaign trail, I don't have a lot of past history to fall back on. But I do know there's a lot of confusion as to where the districts are and who the people are voting for. The demographics have changed just a little, and so I'm dealing with what is current, meeting the people at their homes, knocking doors, meeting with community groups so that they can get to know who I am.
We have just a minute or two left, so in our final moment, can you make your final pitch to voters for us? What message do you want to leave them with today?
Yes. I think that for voters, they need to know who I am and what my values are. And I think mine are like my story is like most people. My dad left Mexico and came to Detroit looking for the promise of the $5 a day Henry Ford made. He was lucky enough to get a job with Ford's. He was even luckier to marry a Polish girl from Alpena. And they started their life during the Depression and their family. And from that, I learned that you had to work hard, you had to save your money, you had to follow the rules, and you have to be a good citizen. So those are values that I'm bringing to this job. I'm a product of public education. K-12 Detroit schools, Wayne State University, my bachelor's degree, Eastern Michigan, my master's degree, Western Michigan, my doctorate degree. I tend to spread myself around. And I believe public education has built that middle class. And so that's really what I want to continue for our future generation.
Martha, thank you so much for taking time with us today.
It was my pleasure talking with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Our guest this time has been Martha O'Cray, a Democratic candidate for Michigan's 33rd State House District. A reminder, you can find our entire Meet the Candidates series on our website, WCMU.org, and remember to exercise your right to vote on November 6th. For everybody at CMU Public Broadcasting, I'm Mike Horace, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for Meet the Candidates. CMU Public Broadcasting invited both major party candidates for this office to participate in this series.
Welcome to this edition of Meet the Candidates. I'm Mike Horace, and this time we welcome Henry Yanez, Democratic candidate for Michigan's 25th State House District. This became an open seat after redistricting. John Switalski, who served 2 terms in the 25th District, is now a candidate in the open 28th House District. Henry, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
In our first few minutes, can you give us some background about yourself and talk about the experience that you're bringing into this campaign?
Well, I'm currently working as a firefighter and paramedic for the city of Sterling Heights. I've been a firefighter there for 17 years. Prior to that, I was a volunteer firefighter for 10 years, so I've been doing this for a long time. And the experience that I bring is really the experience of my job. It's building, making sure that local economies are strong enough to support essential city services like police and fire. This has been a real problem. We've had layoffs in the city of Sterling Heights. We had layoffs in Warren. Millages have been presented and fortunately passed in Warren. It looks like we're probably going to have one in Sterling Heights. So the experience I bring is really the experience of someone who understands the importance of a strong local economy.
Tell us about the 25th House District. It was redistricted recently.
Yeah, and it's you know, for a politician, it's actually very nice. It's very compact. It's literally the eastern half of Sterling Heights. They split Sterling Heights down the middle. The western half of Sterling Heights is the 30th district. The eastern half is the 25th, and then there are 8 precincts in the city of Warren as well.
So, what do you think the big issues are this election?
Well, there's a number of issues. You know, and I can go right down the list, but education is a very important issue. In Sterling Heights and Warren, it is those public services and the cutting of those public services, and mainly because we're not getting the revenue sharing back that I believe that we should. And we're also looking at issues with the personal property tax and how that's going to impact the cities and therefore the services they can provide. That's 1. 2. 3 would be the pension tax. It's huge. You know, we've had people who live in our city who worked in the auto industry all their life. You know, now they're getting a pension. Now those pensions are being taxed where they haven't been taxed in the past. These are people that are living on a fixed income. They use that money to prepare for their golden years. They help out their families. They put that money away for their grandchildren. And now that money's being taxed for tax cuts that go to somebody else, right? So that also affects our local economy because that money used to stay in our local economy. Now it's going off to Lansing and it's being distributed, you know, who knows where. So that's another a very important issue that's being talked about at the door.
Let's get into some specifics about these issues, starting with that pension tax. Would you advocate replacing it?
I would advocate for repealing the pension tax, absolutely. You know, let's be fair about taxes. This state is in trouble. It has been in trouble. And, you know, fortunately, we're starting to work our way out of it, thankfully, because the auto industry is coming back. When this tax was first proposed, I went door to door talking to people about it. And the people of Michigan are very big-hearted and generous. And they said, even though it's going to hurt me, the state's in trouble, and I'm willing to do my part to help the state. But when they are confronted with the idea that someone else is getting a tax cut while they're paying more in taxes, they're very unhappy about it. Again, this money used to stay local. It used to go to help families. Now it's going to help somebody else. And, you know, and it's supposedly this is part of the plan where if you give businesses a tax cut, they'll create jobs. And even conservative Republican Jack Brandenburg, senator from Macomb County, said this will not create one job. This is hurting families and it's hurting communities, and I would be for repealing that tax.
So how do we start creating those jobs, bringing back the manufacturing base?
Well, the manufacturing base is coming in again because we have saved the auto industry. President Obama did a very brave and bold thing by stepping up and saving the auto industry. In Sterling Heights, we have 2 Chrysler plants and 2 Ford plants. So and then in Warren we also have a couple of Chrysler plants. So and the GM Tech Center, obviously, which just announced GM just announced they're going to hire 2,000 more people, right? So because that we saved the auto industry, we've saved manufacturing, we're creating jobs. And that's one of the ways that we're going to expand and build more jobs and a better economy in our area.
What about for small businesses? How can we help them with this job creation?
Well, the small businesses are going to be benefactors of the spinoff of these auto industry jobs. If you just drive down Van Dyke Avenue, you know, by where I live, there's a number of small businesses, whether it's an oil change business, whether it's a party store, you know, a Target, whatever. The people who work in those plants are the same people who live in the area, and they shop there. They spend their money there. And it's the same thing with the people who are being taxed right now, because this pension tax, now that the money's not in their pocket, it's going somewhere else, that's less money for them to shop at these small businesses. Repealing that pension tax, bringing that money back home, fighting for our fair share of revenue sharing is going to help small businesses.
And on the revenue sharing issue, I know that affects local governments, services like police and fire. What would a more fair distribution of that money be? Is there some changes we can make at the state level to help these local communities with the police and fire tasks?
Well, I think the number one thing that we're going to have to do is this personal property tax. I mean, this is going to cost the city of Sterling Heights millions of dollars, which is going to impact, it already has impacted. One of the reasons why we laid off police officers and firefighters is city's budget several years down the road, and they're looking at this tax as potentially being there, and they have to budget for that money not being there, and so it's affecting public safety. And so this is something that we're going to have to address.
Education, another big issue for you. Is it time to take another look at that funding mechanism for public education?
I think when it comes to funding for public education, you know, this is a very complex issue because it's not just about funding for education, but how we provide education. You know, right now we have an education model that students learn to take the test. It's important to pass the test because that's what we use to grade how well we're teaching our kids. So kids are being taught to pass a test. They're not being necessarily being taught critical thinking. I think we have to take a look at how we deliver education before we can even talk about how we're going to fund education. For some reason, everyone seems to think that because we talk about changing education, it's going to cost more. You know, I'm of the mindset that maybe we can provide a better education that actually costs less. So I think we really have to look at how we're going to deliver education before we really get into the nitty-gritty about how we're going to fund that.
As you've been on the campaign trail this fall, what else are you hearing from voters? What are some of their big concerns?
You know, the biggest concern, again, this is strictly locally speaking, is the equality of city services. People moved to Sterling Heights and Warren because they provided great services, they were safe places to live. The city of Sterling Heights for a long time has been recognized by the FBI as one of the 5 safest cities in the country. And they see the quality of services going down. They see their neighborhoods going down. They see foreclosed homes in their neighborhood, homes not being kept up. Services are changing. They don't like it. They want those services back. They want their neighborhoods that they moved to. The reason why they moved to Sterling Heights, they want that Sterling Heights back. And that's really what they're talking about at the door.
How will your experience at the local level translate to service at the state level?
Well, I understand it's all about local communities. It's all about you know, building a strong local economy. And I understand, you know, being a firefighter, getting my paycheck from the taxpayers, I understand the importance of a strong local economy. And look at it, if we have a strong local economy, and we have several strong local economies that builds into a strong county, strong regions, and eventually a strong state. So it's really about bringing it back to the local economies.
There have been a lot of complaints over the last few years about the tone in Lansing. What, in your experience, would allow you to cross the aisle and work with the opposition party? How do you think you'll interact in Lansing?
That's a great question. No, I'm endorsed by Macomb County Executive Mark Hackle. And the reason why Mark endorses me is simply because we had a very long conversation, and we agree on 2 things. One, we agree on a vision for Macomb County. That's number 1. But number 2 is, even though I'm a partisan Democrat, I strongly believe that once elections are over, the D's and R's go off to the side, and we work together to build a strong local economy, strong county, a strong state. It is very important that we do work together. We put ideology aside, and we look at what's best for our state.
Of course, that putting ideology aside, that's been an issue, especially in Metro Detroit, looking at some of these broader issues to help the city of Detroit. What do you think Detroit can learn from Macomb County, from your district?
Well, again, it's all about strong local economies. I think in the city of Detroit, they really have to focus on strong neighborhoods, and they really have to build out from there. It's really basic stuff in Detroit. You know, it's keeping the street lights on. You know, public safety. Obviously, public safety is very important. I was just with a business owner last night who tells me he's spending $6,000 to $8,000 a year extra on security because there's not enough police protection to help his business. So they need to really focus on strong neighborhoods and building out from there. They've done a great job with downtown. You can go downtown, it's safe, you know, you can go see a ball game or whatever. But once you get out in the communities it's where people actually live, where kids walk to school, it's a little more difficult. So I think Detroit really needs to focus on strong local neighborhoods. The
legislature obviously looking at some of these issues. How important do you think regional cooperation would be for that rebirth of Detroit?
It's essential. You know, let's face it, I'm from Sterling Heights, but when I travel, I'm a Detroiter. I'm from Detroit, and I have a lot of Detroit pride. So regional cooperation, especially in the transportation issue, is extremely important. And transportation is one of the issues that I'm very passionate about, and I desperately want to work on transportation issues and moving people and goods. And it's so important to businesses because it provides labor, it moves labor around, and it also moves goods around and more efficient and therefore a better profit for the business. So I think regionally we have to have cooperation.
We have just a minute or so left, so give us your final pitch. What message do you want to leave voters with today?
I want voters to know that I'm going to work very hard for them. I understand what the issues are. My dad was a welder at Ford Motor Company for 48 years. You know, we grew up blue collar. So I understand what bad times are. I've raised 2 children in this economy. I know how difficult it is. My son, who went away to school, came back here to establish himself here in Michigan. Michigan is a growing concern. Michigan has a lot going for it. The Detroit metro area has a lot going for it. Macomb County was always kind of the third leg, I guess, or maybe we should call it the fourth leg of the stool when it came to Detroit, Macomb, Oakland, and Wayne counties. But Macomb County is making a move, and we're going to be the power player in that area. And I'm going to be a part of it. And I'm going to make sure that I'm going to do everything I can. Every day when I wake up, I'm going to make sure that everything I do is going to be for the benefit of the citizens of Sterling Heights and Warren.
Henry, thank you so much for your time today.
All right, thank you very much.
Our guest this time has been Henry Yanez, Democratic candidate for Michigan's 25th State House District. A reminder, you can find our entire Meet the Candidates series on our website, WCMU.org, and come November 6th, please do exercise your right to vote. For everybody at CMU Public Broadcasting, I'm Mike Horace. Thanks for joining us.
This has been Meet the Candidates, a production of CMU Public Broadcasting. Both major party candidates were invited to participate in this series. For a complete listing of the air dates and times for this series, or to watch or listen to this program again, go to our website, WCMU.org.
Support of WCMU is provided by Flint Institute of Arts, presenting Drawing Together International Cartoons. The exhibition features 300 cartoons from the Iden Foundation International Competition and runs through December 30th. FlintArts.org.